World Health Organization says it believes between 80,000 and 180,000 healthcare workers may have died from COVID-19 in the period between January 2020 and May 2021. In a statement issued Thursday, the group called those deaths a tragic loss and an irreplaceable gap in the world's pandemic response. It said the reported rate of infections and deaths among healthcare workers has gone down over time, but added that more work needs to be done to minimize the risk of infection in the healthcare workplace. It said as of September 2021, using data from 119 countries, only an average of 2 in 5 healthcare workers were fully vaccinated. It said fewer than 1 in 10 are fully vaccinated in the African and Western Pacific regions, while 22, mostly high-income countries, report that above 80% of their personnel are fully vaccinated. WHO said it is deeply concerned about the probable number of deaths, the overall low rate of vaccinations, and the vaccine inequities among healthcare workers in low and middle-income countries. The French European Affairs Minister said Thursday that Poland is risking effectively taking itself out of the EU after the country's constitutional court challenged the primacy of EU law over national law. This month, Poland's constitutional court challenged the notion that EU law supersedes the laws of its 27 member nations, with a ruling saying that some EU laws are incompatible with the nation's own constitution. That decision gives the Polish government the justification it had sought to ignore directives from the European Union's Court of Justice. More than 40 countries expressed their concern in a formal statement Thursday at the United Nations about the situation of ethnic Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslims in China's semi-autonomous Xinjiang province. The French ambassador to the UN said China perpetrates generalized and systematic violations of human rights, torture, forced sterilization, sexual violence, and forced separation of children. He also noted that freedom of religion, movement, expression, and culture are subject to severe restrictions. In their joint statement, 43 nations expressed concern about what they called widespread surveillance targeting Uyghurs and members of other minorities, as well as the, quote, collective repression of religious and ethnic minorities. They called for China to grant the High Commissioner for Human Rights access to Xinjiang. Human rights groups and some governments accuse China of sending more than 1 million Uyghurs to detention camps. However, Beijing says those compounds are, quote, vocational education centers and are intended to stop the spread of religious extremism and terrorist attacks. Protests erupted in the streets of Khartoum Thursday over Sudan's hybrid transnational transitional government. Supporters of the Northeast African nation's civilian coalition, the Forces of Freedom and Change, turned out after crowds who support a military-led government marched against civilian rule on Saturday. Thousands of pro-democracy protesters called for a fully civilian government. Their demonstrations skirted around the presidential palace, where Reuters reports pro-military protesters have sat for 6 days. Sudan has elections scheduled for 2023, but factional rivalries threaten to destroy its tenuous power-sharing agreement before then. Civilian leaders have shared power with Sudan's military generals since former President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in 2019. Climate change is an emerging threat to U.S. financial stability that regulators should address in their everyday work. This, according to a top U.S. regulatory panel on Thursday. It was a first for the United States, which has lagged other wealthy countries on tackling financial climate risks. The Financial Stability Oversight Council issued a 133-page report that could ultimately lead to new rules and stricter oversight for Wall Street. It provided a roadmap for integrating climate risk management into the financial regulatory system. The FSOC comprises heads of the top financial agencies and is chaired by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. It was created following the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis to identify vulnerabilities in the U.S. financial system.
Hi, thank you for watching. I hope the videos are useful for you. Please subscribe to my channel using the button below.